My name is Kristi Faltorusso. I am the Chief Customer Officer here at ClientSuccess. I oversee our entire post-initial sales organization that is success, support, and services. And the topic we're going to be talking about today is the data-driven Chief Customer Officer. So I'm going to give you guys a little context here. I recently was invited and privileged to represent ClientSuccess and speak at the Chief Customer Officer Summit hosted by the Customer Success Collective. It was in New York a few weeks back before I got the flu. And so I got to cover this topic. We got really, really fantastic feedback from the folks that attended, and we wanted to make it readily available for everyone who couldn't be a part of that event. So if you attended the Chief Customer Officer Summit in New York a couple weeks back in March, this will be a repeat of that content. But if you haven't, this is going to be really, hopefully, some great insights for you to all take back to your organizations. So without further ado, I know I try to go through that intro quickly because now I only have 50 minutes to give you guys lots of content. Let's get started. So if you've attended any of my webinars, you know I love a good quote. I love something meaty we can sink our teeth into to start the conversation. So how I'm going to kick this one off is a quote that I found from Jay Baer. He said, "We are surrounded by data, but starved for insights." Now I have to pause for a moment and have a little moment of silence because I need that to sink in. Now, the reaction I got when I asked folks at this event, I said, does that feel right? Right? Do we feel like we've got tons of data, but no insights? And every single person there was like, yes, because we do. We have so much data. And I'm going to show you some statistics, guys, that it's going to knock your socks off. But we have so much data. But the reality is, especially as leaders, there is not a ton of actionable insights readily available for us. Now, it's not that they don't exist. They're there. We're going to talk about how to get to that meat. But when we look at the surface level data that we have coming from a multitude of sources, and that's the other challenge that we have, is that we've got so much data living in so many places that it makes it difficult to tie that data together to tell a story that is going to get you to drive the right actions in your business. And so that is the challenge that we are all trying to navigate, right? We've got to figure out, what do we do with this data? How do we make it actionable? Is it the right stuff, right? Because if you slice and dice data a million different ways, you might get 100 different learnings and insights that might tell you to do even contradictory things. And so I want to talk to you guys about today is, how do we get access to the right data that's going to help us drive our businesses forward? Because that's what we're here to do. So this is where it starts to get interesting. Now, I have no idea what each of your tech stacks look like, but I have to imagine that it looks a little something like what I've illustrated here on my slide. Now, this is a little piece of some of the tools that I know customer organizations are using, right? Maybe you have a BI solution, you've got user analytics, you've got a support platform, you've got billing, you've got survey data, you have your communication platforms, a CRM, you've got a CSP, you've got project management software, you've got community insights. There is just a multitude of data, right, that lives in all of these tools. Now, if you're a customer success organization, you're part of that team, maybe sitting in a different role, you know that there's a ton of information in all of these. I could spend probably 45 minutes in each of these just looking at one or two reports daily. And so I know that this is not just me. I'm not making this up. I know that we're all faced with this. Now, I will tell you, I have a smaller tech stack than most because I use ClientSuccess for everything, to be honest with you. But I know a lot of teams are using a lot of these tools. So the big challenge that we all have to start with is, how do we consolidate and democratize this data? Now, let me be very clear here, because when I talk about this, I want to be very specific. I don't mean just consolidate and put it all together. That is only part one of solving this. The second part is this ability to democratize data. And I want to be very clear on what that means. Democratization of data is making sure that everyone in your organization not only has access to that data, they understand how to use that data, and they're being empowered to use that data to drive action in the business. That is what we're talking about here, because it's not just visibility. Visibility is one part, right? In some cases, there's some data that folks should just have visibility to, perhaps. But if you really want to drive your business in a data-driven way, it's about this democratization of it, right? You got to give everybody access to it. They have to be trained and enabled on how to use it. And as leaders, we have to be empowering them to use these insights to do what they know is right. So this is where it starts. Now, I find that most organizations, they fail here, right at the start line. They just don't get this right. Because if you are looking at all this data in silos, I guarantee you, you are not finding the right story. You're not truly understanding what needs to be addressed, and that is the biggest issue. Now, I used to work at a company called Better Cloud. Maybe some of you guys are familiar with it. They are in the SaaS apps management space. That's right. So there is an entire space dedicated to helping organizations manage how many SaaS applications they have. Now, think about this from an IT standpoint. There's also shadow IT, right? So apps that your teams are using that are not part of your paid for tech stack, right? Like, oh, sign up and get a free license. And so there's probably a billion of those also. I'm telling you, it's hard to manage this, but organizations use 371 apps on average. That's according to Productive. They had an article out there that was talking about what the apps look like. This is wild. And this number is up over 100 since I worked at Better Cloud. Now, obviously, that was a long time ago, like 2018, 2019. But 371 applications in your company today. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of those applications has customer data, but even if half of those applications had customer data, I have to pause for effect here, guys, because I need you to realize that even if you had 150 applications that had customer insights, even a customer insight, you got to be able to pull that all together. It is wild, right? So I showed you a screen that had few applications on it. Now think about it at this scale, because this is what larger organizations are faced with. Now, if we're not able to consolidate all that data and democratize it the way that I talked about, that is where we're getting it wrong. I know it seems like a joke. I wish it was, but I'm telling you, I've seen this data. I worked in a company single-handedly. I could see. And honestly, think about how many SaaS companies exist today, right? I'm sure everybody on this call is probably likely working for a SaaS company, maybe. Okay, so like we probably have 200 right there. I know that we get thousands of people who sign up for the boot camps. Like there are a lot of SaaS companies out there, right? They all solve problems. So if you've got companies who are using these, that's what we're faced with, right? It's that sprawl, that data sprawl in a company that we've got to get our hands and hearts and heads wrapped around. Now, I talk about this because I think this is also really important. So this was another statistic that came out as I was doing this. This was a data point from SalesMango that talks about segmentation causing companies to be 60% more likely to understand their customers. Now, when I talk about segmentation, though, in this context, I'm not talking about we have an enterprise and a mid-market and SMB segment, right? Like I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about segmentation of data. So segmentation, according to them, makes companies 130% more likely to know their customers' motivations and 60% more likely to understand their concerns and challenges, which directly translates to increased lead generation and revenue goals. Now, I know you all can read a slide. I have to read it because I need to be able to make this point. How we segment data is going to help us understand our customers and drive actions that will help resolve issues or concerns or challenges that they have. The problem here, again, goes back to my original point of the fact that we don't have access to all this data in one place. We are not empowered to use it. There are challenges there. So we've got to overcome those, because if we can get all of our data together and start to segment it properly, we'll be able to find the insights. And so what I'm going to share with you guys today is a little bit about how I've been using this data and slicing it in meaningful ways, also validating the data. And we're going to talk about what that process looks like in order to drive our programs that drive customer value. So the first challenge that I see, and again, I have the privilege of working at ClientSuccess. So I've got tons of our customers who are customer success leaders who are navigating similar challenges. And a few things come up when we talk about how they are, or peers, colleagues, other people in the industry that I have seen, where they're doing it wrong. Now, the problem is the simplicity in how we're looking at the data. So now when I talk about customer segments, now I'm talking about it like your enterprise, your mid-market, your SMB, or whatever cute little labels you have for your different cohorts of customers. But the first thing is looking at data solely based on customer segments. Now, I The reason why I'm emphasizing that this is not a great way is because typically organizations are segmenting data based on ARR. Now, I was able to make this more interactive when I presented at the CCO Summit. So I did say, give me a show of hands of how many of you at least have ARR as a contributing piece of criteria in your segments. And almost everyone's hand went up because that's the reality. And I know for simplicity's sake, many companies, especially as you're getting started, it's an easy way to slice and dice your customers, right? Maybe it's based on licenses, which also indicates company size or how many users, right? Like the number or that value indicates something else that might be more meaningful. But the reality of it is when we segment our customers that way by that piece of data, ARR exclusively, it's not telling us anything about who our customers are or what their needs are. Okay, we are using that internally as a metric that's important to us and our business to protect revenue. But yet we orchestrate entire programs around our customers based on artificial insights because that is a superficial data point that means nothing about who our customers are or what our customers need. So when I say avoid just using a basic filter like customer segments, because those segments really don't mean much. Now, if you are a company who's gone out of your way to be really thoughtful and strategic about designing your segments based on who your customers are, where they are in their journey, what they need from the partnership, kudos to you. Go ahead, use that. You're probably going to find a wealth of data. Now, the second thing here is customer sentiment. Now, I know that there are folks out there that think that NPS is dead. I will die on the hill that I think that there is a ton of value in the NPS program. I don't believe that you should be running your business on it. I don't think it's a metric you should measure your CSMs and their impact and effectiveness around because it's a company metric. I'm not here to debate NPS. I will tell you, though, there is value in there. However, you shouldn't be using customer sentiment as a way to aggregate data because, again, that might not be telling you anything meaningful. Now, a lot of us who do run NPS campaigns, you might be out there touting a number, right? And I always say, like, that is an artificial number also because it's only based on customers who are giving you feedback. And we also know that that percentage is not a scientifically relevant sample size of your entire customer base. Now, unless you're getting 40, 50% of your customers to go and respond to your NPS, that would be great. I just know that that is statistically not the majority of folks out there that are running this program, right? On most companies on average, they're getting 7 to 10%, maybe 12% response rate on their NPS, which means that is a small percentage of your customer base and not enough to tell you anything meaningful. So the reason why I say don't use this is because when you start to see like, okay, well, great. All of our customers who have given us positive feedback, right? What are the insights? What are the commonalities about these customers? You're not going to get a story here that is going to allow you to create the right programs to, again, drive your business forward. So avoid just isolating customer sentiment as a filter to say, great, what does this tell us about our customers? Again, only it's a small part of the story. And the last one is product usage data. Now, I gotta tell you a story here because I think that this will resonate with some of you. But the reason why, now listen, I am somebody who believes if your customers are not using your product, then it's almost impossible for them to get value out of it, right? But I also know that every product has a time and a place, right? At ClientSuccess, we expect our customers to be using our solution all day, every day, right? If you're managing customers, you should be in our platform. But I've worked for companies where their product might be used once a month or once a quarter because it does a very specific action that it's needed by the customer at a very specific time. So if I was tracking, like, I don't know, daily usage for a company like that, what is that telling me? Nothing, right? Because they're not logging in, but it doesn't mean they're not getting value. So I definitely think that it depends here around product usage data. But why I say that this might not be telling you the most important insights. I worked for a company once and I had a CSM. I was leading a team. I had a CSM who said, yeah, Kristi, like this customer, they're our strongest user, right? Like they're using every part of the platform. They're in there every day. Every single person on their team is an active user. I'm not worried about them. Their renewals in 6 months, they're going to renew. You know where I'm going with this because this customer did not renew. They were using it because our product was something that was so key and core to their team and how they did their job every day. But the reality that came out of it is that while they were using our product, They were deploying a competitive solution so that when they were ready to end the contract with us, they hit a switch and the other solution was there to take our place. So I tell you that, I'm not saying this is happening all the time, but I am telling you that if you're only exclusively focusing on product usage data, that's not going to tell you the most valuable story. Now, again, people use your product every day. I use things all the time, but if you ask me to quantify the value and am I getting the intrinsic value that I need to from the solution, it's not always going to be a yes. So your teams need to be doing their due diligence to tell and understand a bigger story there. This is why identifying your customers' goals, tying the work that they're doing back to measurable results, that is how you should be measuring this, not product usage data. So anyway, I tell you this because these three ways are typically how folks are filtering data. Now, again, they are helpful in bits and pieces, right? And they will tell you specific data points and they'll provide you certain insights. But what happens is companies exclusively use these type of artificial or superficial metrics to then try to drive their business, right? They dictate all of their programs and what they're doing and what they expect their CSMs to do exclusively from things like this. And these are not the best ways. So let's talk about this. I want you to consider how you might want to be segmenting data. Now, I'm not talking about how you segment your customers. Again, how you segment your customers should be very specific to your business. This gives you a very big, like when I say it depends, your company is different, your product is different, who you sell to, right? Your different products. Are you a single solution or a modular solution? There are so many things that are unique to your business that dictate how you should be segmenting your customers. So what I'm talking about here is I want you to consider how you're looking at your customer data, right? So are we looking at it demographically? Because that might tell you something, right? This could be based on, and I say demographic, it could also be firmographic, so the company data. What is it about the company that makes that relevant? Or what is it about the personas of who we're working with that makes those customers similar, right? Because now, again, we're thinking about how we can aggregate these different segments to pull different insights from. Geographic. I know that customers who operate in different geographic regions might have similar behavioral patterns. I used to work and run teams in APAC, and I used to run teams in EMEA. I've run global teams, and I will tell you, globally, behaviors are very different. How business is done is very different. So if I tried to put all of those customers based on artificial or superficial segmentation together, I might not be looking at that data correctly. So I challenge you to say, okay, break it down firmographically. So based on company, different data points, geographic segmentation, psychographic segmentation, technographic, behavioral, needs-based, value-based, how your customers are getting value from your solution, right? So this could be based on certain use cases. At ClientSuccess, one of the things that we've done, I think really well to help guide our customers in defining their goals is we've come up with our 7 core objectives. Like there are 7 reasons why any company or person might purchase a customer success software. We know very well that almost every use case can fall into those 7. Now, I've had these 7 out there in the universe for the past 3 years since I've been at ClientSuccess. I've challenged people to come up with an 8th. There is no 8th. It is these 7. And so what that does is it allows us to help present to our customers the different objectives and define goals that kind of fit into those objective buckets to make sure that we are driving the right value. So if I segmented my customers based on their defined objectives, that's going to tell me something meaningful. If we talked about it based on what our customers need, that might tell you something meaningful. So you get it. I'm not going to sit here and try to educate you all on each of these to teach you what these different types of segmentations are, but rather to say how you look at your data needs to be reconsidered. If you are not slicing your data these different ways to find real stories and insights, you're going to be doing a disservice to your company because, again, we want to stop looking at things superficially and we want to dive deeper to find the insights that are going to allow us to create repeatable programs. That's what we're trying to get to here. I don't need you guys to create one-off strategies that only solve one customer's needs. When you start to figure out these types of segmentations, it's going to uncover different ways that you should be running your business and how you should be educating, enabling your teams to go and manage their customers. Now, the next thing I dug into. So the first thing is how I segmented my data. We did a full deep dive into that. So I used all those things, or a lot of those things, maybe not all, to start slicing the data. The second thing I started to dig into is why do customers stay and why do they go? Okay. This is something that's really interesting. Now, I think a lot of companies do a great job of understanding why customers go, right? But we don't spend enough time analyzing why do our customers stay. Now, I flip that around, and if you've attended any of Greg Dane's, who's part of Churn RX, he'll talk about this all the time, but focusing on why your customer stays so we can repeat that. If we're putting too much emphasis on why our customers go, all we're doing is trying to solve these, solve for these symptoms. But if we know why our customers stay and we can replicate that, whether that's in who we sell to and redefining that ICP, or what use cases drive the most value, or how and what we should be doing with our customers, all of those things really matter. Now, what I provided here is a screenshot that comes out of ClientSuccess, just to give you guys some context here, but this is something that we refer to as our pulse reasons. So in ClientSuccess, we've got a powerful tool called Pulse. It allows us to allocate, each CSM can go and allocate a pulse on a 6-point curve to each of their customers based on their engagements, and assign pulse reasons. So we can sign up to 3 risk reasons or 3 success factors. We do both because it's important for us to know what's going wrong, but also what's going right. Again, we don't focus enough time and energy around that. But what I do is I do a deep dive into the data that we have available here at ClientSuccess and based on these pulse reasons, and it tells me why are customers staying, why are they going. Now, I do want to add a disclaimer. All of this data here is from a demo account, so this is not my data here at ClientSuccess, but I'm using this as an example to say we can understand if our customers are having challenges with our support team. Great. I might need to do a deep dive there and figure out what is broken or what are the issues that are arising coming out of support. Is it time to resolution? Is it the response? Is it communication? What is happening with support that might be over here? If we look at the data in this demo account environment, 59 of our customers who have been tagged with this as a risk reason. And if you look at that, I can also see not only the percentage of my customers that represents, but the revenue. That's where this gets really insightful. I need to understand how much my revenue is impacted by these issues. Now, if you are a leader in a customer success function, whether you are managing renewals, upsells, or those commercials, whether you are responsible for a number or not, your team influences and impacts that number. And you should be paying attention to that. So if I'm a leader, again, regardless if I am managing revenue or not, and I see here that my support organization or something tied to support is impacting negatively $4.3 million of revenue, guess what I am prioritizing? It's the biggest box on the screen. I don't have to look at anything else. If I'm looking at this through the revenue lens and my data is saying, Kristi, $4.3 million is impacted by support. I wonder what I'm going to go and dig into and try to build some programs around. This is a no-brainer, right? I'm addressing the things that I understand are impacting customers who exist today. Now, I'm not analyzing churn necessarily in this report. Now, I do care why they stay, why they go. But for me right now, I'm looking at this data to say, why are my customers at risk? What is happening? What are the programs and initiatives that I, as a leader, need to deploy in order to take care of this, right? To bring that risk down, to preserve $4.3 million in revenue. That's my job. These types of insights enable you to do that. So if you're not looking at this type of data, if you don't know where the risk in your book is coming from and how much revenue that's impacting and what specifically is happening in those categories. Now, in our solution, the cool thing here is I can click on any of these boxes and see like subcategories. So I would be able to understand if I click into support, is it response time? Is it resolution time, right? Is it communication? Is it something else, right? Is it bugs? Or is it whatever? I can click in and see all of that specifically. So I go a level deeper. Customer communication, right? I see here is the second one. And then I've got business viability as a third. Business viability is interesting to me. If I've got $2 million at risk because of customers who are challenged from a business standpoint. Now, listen, coming off of, I put say air quotes here, off a recession, coming off of COVID, there was a lot of businesses that did not sustain, right? Their business viability, they're not doing well, they're cutting costs, they're doing layoffs, all of these things. That's something I have to pay attention to. Now, I might use that insight and go back to my sales team and say, hey guys, there are some specific data points here, some criteria that we're noticing about customers and their ability to be viable through this recession or through this economic time. Maybe we sell to less of those customers right now, right? Like let's avoid that. These are the types of insights that allow you to make meaningful changes in your business. So this is the type of stuff that I was digging into. Now, all these insights were super helpful. I love data. I miss having a data science team. I will say that. So if you are somebody who has a data scientist in your organization, take care of them. Because I've had to learn to do really creative things with tools, with Excel. I always say Excel is the most powerful tool in the universe because it's not what you learn, it's what you do with it. So I've had to find a lot of really powerful insights here that are telling stories that are allowing me to understand big revenue impacts, right? Like what's having the most impact on it? Where can I go and make changes and lean in so that I'm focusing on the right things? Because again, we have these ideas, we have feelings, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your gut's telling you, right? You've got to have the data to support it. So again, I'm going to emphasize it's not what you learn, it's what you do with it. So if you are not putting together now actionable programs with that data, you're not doing it right. So here's what I have found, right? So when I did my analysis and I did a deep dive here and I said, okay, what's going on in our customer base? Here's what I found. Customers that I worked with, they had a lack of clear strategy for customer success. We see this all the time and the community talks about it often. If you've read LinkedIn posts at any point in your life, you may have come across one that says, hey, buying a customer success platform is not the strategy. The reason why people say that is because a lot of folks buy customer success software thinking that it's going to help them define their strategy. The reality is it's a little cart before the horse. You should have your strategy. You should have tried it. You should understand what needs to be optimized and how it needs to be orchestrated, and then you deploy a software. Now, that said, you can't undo what's been done. I found that a lot of folks just lacked real strategy behind it, right? If I ask folks like, how are you measuring the impact of our solution or this partnership? They didn't have clarity around that. And that goes back to them not having a clear strategy. A lot of folks were building out a CS function for the first time, right? So they didn't have CS. They promoted maybe an individual contributor into a leadership role. They maybe hired a first-time leader. We've got somebody who's just building this out for the first time in the organization, which we all know it's hard to get buy-in. It's hard to build these processes. Doing anything for the first time is tough. So I found that customers were building this out for the first time. First-time leaders with minimal guidance and organizational support. If you are a leader who's never done this before, you've never deployed a customer success software, you don't know how to drive cross-functional support and buy-in, really like you're learning, you're figuring it out. We've all been there. But when you are somebody who's in that position, you have a hard time advocating for things. You have a hard time challenging your cross-functional peers, right? There's a multitude of things that we know that happens when you're a first-time leader. Well, we have found that folks who were first-time leaders were challenged with those same things that we've all been through. And as a result, we weren't getting the right support across the organization to drive the success of this partnership and program. Lack of internal resources, right? How many times have we thought we could do something only to realize it takes more time, takes more people, takes more data or tooling or something than we have today? That happens all the time. So we have found that our customers had lack of internal resources. Then we had inaccurate and inconsistent data with no governance. I know that we can all kind of feel this pain point, but like garbage in, garbage out. And we know that bad data that is not accurate, that is not current, is not going to help us. So we had a lot of customers who were pumping in not great data that wasn't being governed into our solution. And so when you got bad data coming in, you got bad data coming out. So we did all this analysis to find that these were the common themes that were preventing folks from being successful. So with all this data, with all these insights, now I have insights that I can drive action from. I was able to put together programs. And so what I tried to figure out is like, okay, what do our customers need the most from us? And this is a question that you need to be asking because it's not about how do we drive our internal objectives. You got to figure out how are you helping your customers be successful? Too often we design our programs inside out and not outside in. I am challenging you all to go look at your programs. If they are not designed outside in, meaning with your customers' needs first, right? You got to go revisit that. So here's what I found. Technical support with ticket management on bugs and questions, right? Like we found that there was a lot of stuff that needed to just be helped with here. There was a lot that needed to be dug into. Our technical support team, they had challenges with like bugs and questions that were coming up, things that were more related to training enablement. Platform training for new features and functionality. We needed to provide that. Technical support. We knew that we needed to figure out, okay, how do we scale support to help reduce ticket volume? Then it was platform training for new features and functionality. How do we make sure that as we roll out new products, that every single customer was being trained and enabled and understood what was available and how to use it? Enablement on reconfiguration and best practices on how to use the software. I am confident that if you've supported a customer for at least 12 to 18 months, maybe you've seen some turnover in the organization, right? New leader, new main point of contact, new resource somewhere else in the group. Well, every time you bring in somebody new, right, they might have a new POV on how things should be deployed or how they should be set up. Well, we found that as folks were getting laid off during all these rifts that we have seen, right? Maybe they brought new leaders on, or there was somebody new in the business who took things over. They had a different strategy that they wanted to deploy. They had a different way that they wanted to do things. And it was my job and the team's job to make sure that they understood how to do that, how they could get value based on their new goals from our software. Then there's this idea, our customers needing industry education around evolving trends in the space. This is platform agnostic. They didn't need to know what button to push to do this thing. They need to understand, like, what should they be prioritizing? Like, what is happening in the industry around customer success? And then lastly, my customers needed professional services to help them expedite deployment. This went back to, we've got challenges with resourcing. How can we augment that in a meaningful way? So these were 5 things that we found if we could help our customers solve these 5 things, we would be able to mitigate some significant risk, drive more value for our customers, and hopefully, see that translate later down the line through retention and growth. So this is what we figured out based on all of our data analysis, what our customers actually needed. Again, nothing to do with us, nothing to do with the programs that I thought that we needed to deploy. This was based on what our customers were telling us. Now, that information could be coming through how they use our platform. It could be coming from conversations they're having with their CSMs, could be coming from NPS, could be coming from a multitude of places, right? We know this. There's tons of data. What is that data telling you? So this is something that we really stopped to ponder and came up with these 5 things that we had to solve for. So what did we do? We launched new programs, guys. So I said, these are the things our customers need. Great. How can we today, with the resources we have? Now, that's the other thing. I will tell you, I'm a leader. I do not have endless budget. I don't get to say yes to everything. Even if I'm the one asking for it at the top, I don't get to just validate and say, great, we need this thing, so we're gonna move forward with it. I need all this money. Try to figure out what you can do with what you have today, guys. Be resourceful. Your business will appreciate that. Your CFO will appreciate that. So here's what I launched. I launched a community. We launched new webinar trainings. We did self-guided onboarding through an onboarding portal that we created through Google Sites. Guess how much Google Sites cost me? Just the cost that we're paying for Google, right, to have access to that for our company. We launched paid services. So we now offer 3 different packages, right? We don't have a whole buffet of things. We found these are the 3 packages, the types of things that we can offer as a standard package that we don't have to like do an SOW for. We just basically went and said, great, these are 3 common things that our customers might need help with. See, look at this. I got somebody else who understands. Yes, Google Sites. Support office hours, right? Making a support agent available for certain time blocks every week. Our customers can then go book time. It's always there. It's standard hours every week. You want to follow up on a ticket. You want to go check on how things are going. You can do that. Leadership workshops. These are exclusive for your leadership teams. You want to get executives engaged? Guess what? Don't talk about your product, but bring them together, let them learn and grow together, solve problems together. They love that. And then thinking more strategically about our customer marketing. So you can see here, these are 7 programs that I was able to do with what we have today. I did not have to buy new software. I did not have to go and hire 10 new people to do these things. It's what can I offer today simply using what I have. That is a level of creativity that I'm going to challenge you all to come up with, because you do not need an army of people. As we've seen through all of these inflated hires to all these rifts, we've got to become more sustainable as we build organizations. So I'm telling you, you've got more than you think. You've got to just be creative with how you use what you have. So these are the things that we deployed. I will tell you, we're relaunching our community. So we did launch our community last year. That is a failure story that I love to share with folks. So if you want to know how I launched and failed at Community and how I'm relaunching it more thoughtfully this time around, happy to share that. Webinar trainings. So we do a few different ones. So one, you guys might be familiar. I did talk about the boot camps. We brought those back this year in a big way. Last year, we tapered off. We did it in Q1, but then we didn't do Q2, 3, and 4. We were trying to assess, like, is there real value here? Well, folks were like, hey guys, you got to bring this back. We love it. There's so much value there. So we did. But we're also launching masterclass for our customers. This allows every end user of our product to also get value on what are best practices. So it's by CSMs for CSMs. The CSMs on my team who use ClientSuccess every day, they're leading these trainings on teaching the end users how they should be thinking about using our platform. So again, not new resources, empowering my team to be part of more creative programs. Self-guided onboarding, like I said, I did this through Google Sites. The resources that this cost me was my time, which I was excited to make this investment. So this was like a passion project for me, nights and weekends. Yes, I know not everyone wants to work nights and weekends. I was happy to on this project. My customers love it. There is a ton of value in there, and we're making it a little bit better every day. And then all these other things, like I said, these are creative things. They did not cost us anything new. So I challenge you to think about, how are we solving those problems through creative initiatives? And I need you all to think differently about how you're doing things. Now, I will tell you, the big thing that we did is we focused on helping our customers drive value. Every single thing we did was about solving their problems and listening to what they were telling us. Again, listening means we're also just looking at the data. What is the data telling us? And so once we understood what our customer needed, we were able to design these programs to help them drive more value. And when you make that your focal point, right? Every single thing we do, that's all I care about. Because I know that if I put my customers first, I help them get value, that will drive revenue, that will drive retention. If I'm focusing on these like lagging indicators that are just keeping us on this hamster wheel, we're never going to get where we need to go. So if you make this your focus, if you design those programs outside in and not inside out, I promise you, you will start to see that benefit. So here's a few things I'll leave you with before we get to some Q&A. It's important to make sure that you're driving impact with data, obviously. So step one, please, if you have not done so, you need to go do an audit. You need to go figure, maybe you connect with your IT teams, you connect with somebody in your organization, maybe you have a CTO, you have somebody, maybe you have somebody who manages all your applications. You need to understand what applications live in your organization today. And I'll tell you 2 benefits to this. Because you need to know where all that customer data lives, because you have to consolidate it. You have to have a central repository, and you need to be able to empower and enable your teams to use it. Now, the other part 2 benefit of it that has nothing to do with this, if you go and do that audit, you will creatively find that your organization has a lot of technology that you could probably already use, that you can have some creative use cases, right? Like, I'm going to give you a very basic one. Maybe another team is using a Monday.com for project management. Oh, well, we have an onboarding process that we're managing through Excel. Great. Can we just add licenses to Monday? Adding licenses to software that already exists in your organization, it's easier to get a yes than to go through an entire procurement process where you're trying to find new budget to buy new software. So when you go through this exercise, the cool ancillary benefit is that you might find something that you personally are not using today, that your team is not using today, that might actually be really beneficial. Step 2, you have to segment your data appropriately. Please look for stories and insights that surface level data that it's not providing for you, right? Again, if you have ARR, customer segmentation, which again, okay, I'm not here to judge, but it's not going to tell you real meaningful things about your customers. So think about how you segment the data. Think about the different questions you're asking. Like, here's the big thing. Data tells you the answers to questions. So if you can start to come up with really creative questions and then go to your data, that's where the insights come from, right? If you just expect the data to just jump out at you and tell you something really powerful that's going to like change your business, I promise you, you'll be staring at it for a very long time. Ask great questions of your data and the answers will come back. Step 3, you got to take action on the insights. If you're not doing anything with this data, so what? Who cares? Right? I have seen so many reports and spreadsheets and dashboards that have been built and exist to do nothing. So I'm telling you, if you have access to data, bless your heart, because not everyone does, you got to put it to work. Make your data work for you. You've seen the programs that I have underway. Some of these have already been deployed. We've already gotten great feedback from customers. I validated some of this with our customers before I even built the programs. I said, hey guys, here's what the data is telling me. Here's what I want to do with it. What are your thoughts, Mr. and Mrs. Customer? And I let my customers tell me, am I reading into this the right way? Am I doing the right things? They validated it for me. So take it a step further. Get your customers to validate it. Step 4, track and monitor the right KPIs and metrics. I'm not here to tell you what those KPIs and metrics are. We have different ones that are based on the programs that we are deploying here, but you need to make sure that you've got a good combination of leading and lagging indicators. And I tell you why this is so important, besides maybe some obvious reasons. You might have to pivot quickly, right? So if you don't have good leading indicators, data that you can sense, is this program working early enough to signal you, you're not going to be able to pivot and make changes fast enough. So for us, I'm able to see, okay, cool. Is this starting to yield the results that we want? So yes, if it's telling me answers to those early decisions, right? Like find pivotal moments to measure certain actions, activities, right? Think about the data you have access to. So for us in community, right? Like a leading indicator will be like, how many of our customers are subscribing and just signing up for it? That might be an early one. Forget whether or not they're using it and contributing to boards and forums. You've got to find the things like, what is step 1? That if your customers are doing these things, or these are the insights that you're gathering for step 1, are we on to the right thing? Will this lead to step 2? So figure out what those KPIs are, but have a combination of leading and lagging. If your leading indicators tell you something's not working, you got to pivot, right? Do not wait. Make the changes. And so maybe this means starting with a small cohort of your customers as you roll things out and test it. I'm a big advocate of that. Like start small, roll something out. So make sure that, again, you're tracking it, make sure that you can pivot and you can learn from that. Okay. So that said, that brings us to the end of this. I've got 9 minutes. I can answer some questions. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to take a sip of water because I've just been talking really fast for about an hour. Thank you for letting me take that pause. Okay, I'm going to pull up our QA and see what questions we've got. Okay, so one of the questions I got from Angie was, would you consider industry of a client a relevant possible segmentation of data? Yes, but there's got to be something more to it, right? Like industry can be a way, like it's part of the firmographic data. So I would say, yes, it's helpful, but there's got to be more to it. Like not just the industry. You might see certain behaviors, but I might have companies of all sizes in an industry. So what else besides industry can we tell? Like, again, if I'm going back to firmographic data, industry, company size, company revenue, number of employees, like figure out what are the additional pieces of information that you can use about that company, not just industry. Because again, as you start to layer in additional criteria, your learnings and insights will become more meaningful because you'll be able to see like, oh, okay, customers that look like this, that behave like this, that have these needs, that do these things need X. Great, let's create a program for X. If you're just looking at it broadly, again, this goes back to like just these simple certain metrics. I feel like industry alone isn't going to be super powerful. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, next question here. Any resources to help with building out a CS function? I feel like we're in survival mode. I'm sorry that you are. A lot of folks are doing what needs to be done immediately, but I want to start getting out of that mode and building out this part of the business. I do have some resources. If you want to, this is Tanisha, if you want to send me a note, you can send it to me on LinkedIn because that's probably the easiest path for me to send you in this forum. You can just send me a DM on LinkedIn and I'll connect with you. I'll give you my email address and I can share out some resources that might be beneficial to you. You're not alone there. I will say that there are a lot of folks that sadly are struggling. They're in survival mode. I think a lot of folks are, especially after any rifts. So sorry that that's what you're navigating right now, but we probably have some resources we can share with you. Okay. Next question is, how much of the data points for recommended customer segmentations do you or CSM fill in versus having customers self-identify? This is by Victoria. So Victoria, just to answer that question, one of the things that we do up front, so when we bring a new customer into the business, one of the things that we do is we actually have them complete a customer survey. Now, I know some of you are like, oh, that feels like a little redundant coming out of the sales process, but we're very clear that it's a new customer survey. Now, you can also deploy these surveys at a different point in time and say like, hey, we're doing a data refresh. Like there's plenty of reasons, organic reasons you can go and send it out. But we do this up front with all of our customers. So we've started doing this since I started 3 years ago at ClientSuccess. So we've got every customer that's been a part of coming into ClientSuccess over the past 3 years has completed this survey. So we have data for a lot of our customers. And we ask very specific questions. And some of that data will be used to fill out these fields, and we'll populate that into custom fields into ClientSuccess. Other times it's things that we learn over time that we'll fill in and populate, right? Sometimes it's about collecting this information organically. And then other data points that are important, right? They might either come from sales when sales is doing their vetting and we're qualifying customers in. Data might come from there. And then also there might be some research that the CSMs might be conducting themselves, right? There's a ton of resources out there that we can all leverage. I love Crunchbase. I love Discover. I love LinkedIn, the G2. Like there's a ton of different places you can go find information about your customers. So just figure out what is the right data that you need right now to make some decisions, and then figure out the best way to collect it. Like I said, some of it will be things I can get directly from my customers through surveys. Other times it's data that I might pull in through other mechanisms or channels. So hopefully that's helpful. Answering next questions. So we often say we have lots of data and little information. Yes, thanks, John, for validating that point, right? It goes back to like we have lots of insights. Lots of data, not too many insights. So we got to dig for it. Okay, question from chat. Can you provide examples of leading and lagging indicators? Okay, so I'll give you some examples. I'll break it down. We'll use onboarding as an example. I think it's a stage in the journey that's probably relevant to a lot of us. So if I'm thinking about onboarding and leading and lagging indicators, right? A leading indicator might be, for me, did we get full participation in our partnership kickoff, right? Did we have the executive present? That might be a first indicator, right? Because if we don't have the executive participating in the partnership kickoff for us, that might be an early warning sign that we are not being prioritized in the business, or that we do not have the buy-in, or we don't have the support from the executive. The second thing I might look at is, do we have a clear understanding of our customers' goals along with measurable key results? If our customers do not have the ability to articulate that, how do we know that we're successful? Right? We can't just define our success based on our internal completion of certain stages or activities. Our customers have to tell us how they are defining success. If your customers cannot do that, that is going to be an early warning sign for us. So that would be a leading indicator. A lagging indicator for us might be the completion of onboarding and the validation of that first measurable result or that first outcome. Those would be lagging indicators for us. So there could be some things that we would look at, like I said earlier, at the top of the activity, like what are some of those factors that we want to consider? And then later down, it would be some of the measurables. So just, again, it's leading indicators. So early things that would happen in a certain process, and then lagging is going to be the things that you might measure at the end of that thing. So that would be some examples of us, if I'm using onboarding as an example to indicate leading and lagging indicators. Hopefully that's helpful. That came from the chat. Thanks for bringing that over there, Ben. That looks like it's the end of our questions in the Q&A. I'll give everybody one more second if you want to ask any additional questions there. Michael, you got questions on the customer survey. I'm happy to share some feedback and even export a sample of ours just to give you some context on like what we ask. We're very specific. Our survey is pretty meaty, but our customers filling it out, we make it super easy with like multiple choice and like multi-select and pick lists and stuff like that. So it's like they're not all fill in the blank because that feels like a burden. So we try to make it easy for them. But they love that. You can copy my homework anytime. I can't guarantee you that I'm getting 100 though. So be prepared to get the grade that I get. But happy to share it. So send me a message, Michael, and I'm happy to share that survey with you. Anybody has any other questions, guys, it's okay. Follow up with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have continued conversations around this if you've got any additional questions. But thank you all so much for giving me some of your time today. I appreciate you being a part of this conversation. It's really important stuff. That's why I want to talk about it, because getting access to good, actionable data that drives our businesses forward is the key for all of us. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, you guys, before you leave, please sign up for the boot camp. If you haven't, I promise you there are 4 sessions in our upcoming boot camp. I guarantee you that one of them will be interesting to you, if not all 4. So please, Ben, my buddy Ben, just dropped the link in the chat. Again, you can go and register for that. Please share it with your friends, share it with your mom, invite them. I want everybody to come. I love our boot camps. I put a ton of work into them. Again, all new content, fresh ideas, fresh perspectives. So hopefully you guys will join me every Tuesday in May. I hope to see you guys there. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you soon.